Hello, BookTube. We're here live with another installment for City in March. And I have Scott Danielson, Aaron Hook,
Everybody.
and Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads.
All right.
Hey, everyone.
And yeah, we're going to talk about tales 5 and 6. So that's Paradise and Hobbies. And we're getting near to the end. And the first story, Paradise, is a direct sequel to Desertion, the fourth tale. Did anybody want to sort of give a summary?
Hmm?
Sorry?
I said and Census, I would say. It's a direct sequel to both. The previous two stories, both.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, well, it definitely is, but there's a big space of time between Census and even I think Desertion and Paradise, because it gets a little confusing, the timeline a little bit, because it seems to be one thing at one moment and then it's uncertain at another moment.
Yeah, well, we have the mutant in Census.
Yeah,
shows up in this one and is a big part of this one. So that one set up that piece of Paradise, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's stuff that's looking back to it, and each story basically looks back towards even right to the first one many times as well, from City and then Huddling Place, and the word huddling, as we'll see, will come up. But did anybody want to give sort of an outline of Paradise?
Feel free to go. Anybody? I did one last week. You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, all right. Yeah. So Paradise. So it takes place after the Jupiter story that we talked about last time, and in the Jupiter story, of course, some people, Fowler went into, transformed biologically into a Jovian creature, and decided to stay, at least at that time. It looked like he was going to. So in this one, he decided that he was going to return and tell humanity about it, which he did. So the very first part is him and his dog, Towser, was with him, but Towser stayed. Towser stayed on Jupiter, but Fowler returned. And then not only did he return to the base in Jupiter, but then he flew to Earth. And on Earth, we have another Webster. And so Fowler returns to the Earth and basically tells his story to the people in charge. And Webster, in particular, finds that pretty dangerous. But only it becomes extremely dangerous once the mutant shows back up. And what was his name again? Joe or something like that?
Joe, I think.
Yeah. So he comes back and he starts to explain the Juane philosophy that he has worked out, and ends up in that story, Census. He said, "I'm going to use this to my advantage." And this is when he does so. He basically releases the Juane philosophy on the Earth at the same time that this person is trying to explain what it's like to be a Jovian. And that results in pretty much humanity wanting to become Jovian. And they do. They leave. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess they don't quite leave at the end of this story, but in the next one we talk about they do. But Webster has a big decision in front of him, and he actually considers assassination of the guy who was the Jovian, so that this stuff wouldn't be released, because he felt like he knew what the result was going to be.
Yeah,
so that's it in a nutshell. Did I get it right?
It's sort of as well comes back to the thing where in the previous stories where people were sort of selfish for themselves. Like even Joe was selfish for himself, and even Webster in some ways is selfish for himself, even though he's thinking a little more of humanity. But it's everybody's going to say, well, screw everything else. I'm going to Jupiter, you know, and just thinking of themselves as well. But the thing that's interesting is that in the notes, the doggish notes, like at the beginning, he's like, he clearly says, well, this, you know, if you had any doubts of that humanity is a fantasy, this is it.
Yeah. And it's like everything, the opposite of doggishness, right?
Yeah.
It was actually saying this species is against everything that we're for, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at another section because they talk about the philosophy was seen by man as something which would advance him 100,000 years in the space of 2 short generations. At least that was the original thought. Like that's what Duane sort of said, or they thought it was going to in Huddling Place. And then, well, it did, I suppose, but not in the same way.
Right.
Well, the whole idea, I found it curious, is that everyone would give up our own species to become something else on a different planet. I mean, I can see definitely some people going for it. I'm not sure the whole species would say, let's just be Jovians, you know, unless.
Well, see, that's the thing with the, and that's why I think it was the Duane philosophy, because everybody actually felt and understood exactly what Fowler felt and understood. And without that, they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't give up everything and go. That's the idea.
That Duane philosophy was fascinating, you know. So I've got it highlighted here, but it's basically the Duane philosophy provides an ability to sense the viewpoint of another. It won't necessarily make you agree with that viewpoint, but it does make you recognize it. You not only know what the other fellow is talking about, but how he feels about it. With Duane's philosophy, you have to accept the validity of another man's ideas and knowledge, not just the words he says, but the thought at the back of the words. So I guess it's knocking down. He said it's better than telepathy, even, you know. So because he's saying it's not going to make you believe it, but it's going to make you understand, and the motives of the person, I guess, who is doing the speaking. So I guess the idea there is not only is the Fowler telling everybody what it was like to be Jovian, but they could actually understand it in a deep way. And in that previous story, you know, we talked near the end about all those things that that made humans consider that it was better. You know, why did Fowler want to stay a Jovian in the first place? And it was the release of all this stuff. If I could find that quote, that would be interesting to look at too. But I see what you're saying, Greg, and I guess not everybody did, right? There were 5,000 left behind.
Well, I think that's sneaking into the next story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there was this enclave. Was it Geneva?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was the last.
And it would be, you know, it says in the story, you know, these are the remnant of the people. It says some were left behind, some stayed behind. But you'd think that there would be other people in the world too that decided to stay. But I think that the point of this is, with full understanding of what Fowler was saying, it was preferable to the situation they were in. Everybody, and that's kind of a heck of a statement.
The other thing is too, like, did this actually the people that were on other planets, because clearly they had changed people for other planets. They converted them to whatever life forms, like on Venus. You know, and it doesn't sound like they did it for Mars, but that's still questionable. There's nothing specifically said about that.
Yeah.
But did everybody leave there as well from the other planets? And that's never addressed, which I find kind of interesting.
I mean, now that you mention it, it's like, yeah, they mention these other planets, but they're not really touched on at all in these stories.
No.
Yeah.
And what's going on other than humanity left for Jupiter. So,
Yeah. And also too, there's other things like there's life studies or life things being done on Pluto or something like that, at the outer edge of the solar system. And that's not touched up. And also too, on the day that this was happening, the next day, the first real interstellar mission to Alpha Centauri was going to take place.
Mm.
Now, did that still take place? Again, like these are all things that I find interesting, that are in and behind the story, or that are in between the lines, in a sense.
Yeah.
And also, what happened to the people who were farming, who weren't involved in the sort of modern civilization? Because I don't think they would have necessarily gone along with it, even with the Joanne philosophy.
Yeah, well, that's the other question, is how would they have even known, because of the way it was transmitted was through a kaleidoscope and through other lights, advertisements. Now, did Joe and the mutants figure out a way of getting it to them as well? Yeah, these are sort of questions, but you do find out not so much in the next story, but the one after that, you find out a little more, that there are, like, it's I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but I will say that there are other people, there are other humans across the world, but there's not that many by that time. So
yeah,
so it looks like, yeah,
it's interesting to think about that, because in Simac's world here, it's like the time that we're in is the worst, right? If you're kind of not up with the technology and modernism, then you may not want to go be Jovian.
Yeah.
But everybody that is wants out of there. You know what I mean? It's just interesting to me. So, it's like, what is he saying? Is he saying that, because I think a lot of the point of this is that there's like a pessimism of humanity's future, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we've messed up so badly that there's really just no hope for us as a species. Dogs deserve the earth, right? Dogs and all their innocent goodness, they're the ones that should inherit this place, and that we should move on. But yet, this idea that, well, if we're not taking part in this technological stuff, then maybe we wouldn't want. We're satisfied enough maybe to not want to be Jovian. And again, you're implying that maybe they didn't know, or didn't, because they didn't. If they didn't have that Joanne philosophy, maybe they didn't fully understand what it was going to be, so that they decided not to do that. But regardless, it's an interesting choice by Simac. Is just I'm just kind of thinking through that.
well,
because sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Part of it for me is that he needed to do his story to be inherited by dogs. He needed to rid the world of humans in some method.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could have done it with a plague or anything. And honestly, just
so what an interesting. I don't know if I've encountered this before. By choice, they did it.
Yeah.
And he's writing this right after World War II.
During the end, and then he adapted a little bit of it. But so far too, when I've been reading these stories, the only changes that I've seen in the stories are from City and Huddling, and the near the ending of Huddling Place. There's no really other changes to the stories that I can see from the original publications.
Mm-hmm.
So he did, by the time the book came about, it just, I think, fueled a little more, like the atomic bomb fueled a little more his idea, I think. because he was disillusioned with everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And he does say that in his forward, which is not in most of the books for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's curious that he was so disillusioned at that period of time when at least the United States was arguably having its really big growth as a country. That we came out of World War II and just we said now we are the world leaders of freedom or whatever. However, you wanted to say if they're deserved or not, but he saw it very differently. He saw that.
Yeah, Michael K. Vaughan read a really nice thing that Simak had written, and is that an introduction? In Michael K. Vaughan's video on City, it was Simak writing long after he had written City and was talking about looking at it again and what it was like and what he was thinking at the time, and this stuff was in mind. This disillusionment with humanity.
Yeah, that he wrote that during the 70s, and that's why I don't know why it's not in every edition. It should be. Mm-hmm. It should be in there. And as we found out, like Aaron's copy doesn't have the last epilogue story in his copy of this.
Yeah.
So really
Which copy have you got? No.
It's that version.
So it looks like the same version, but isn't the same version.
No, I had no idea because
very interesting. Yeah.
I think one other person I know has the epilogue story in, and they bought it recently as well. So I don't understand this at all.
Yeah.
Now I don't have my paperback copy in front of me, but at least my paperback doesn't have any sort of table of contents.
No, I don't think any of them do.
My Kindle. No, wait a second. My Kindle has a table of contents.
That's what I have. Yep.
And it's very easy that you can see. And I actually had to flip through my paperback and got to a point where they said epilogue. And it's not easy to determine that you had an epilogue because it's just in the middle of the page, a few blank spaces, epilogue, couple blank spaces, and they continue on. They don't even give you a page break between so-called chapters or stories. So, how are you sure you don't have it, Aaron? Or is it just?
Yeah, no. It's with mine. It does actually have page breaks. It doesn't have a table of contents, but it's like that at the beginning of every story. See, every tale is one, and it does end on number 8.
Yeah, it should be on page 243 of Aaron. So it just ends at 242, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last page. So
very interesting.
Yeah. Now, here's the question: are both of yours British editions?
Yeah, I've bought mine here. So yeah.
Yeah, mine's published Great Britain by Glance in 2011. This edition.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of a mystery. I don't understand why that doesn't have that in, but I know he didn't want the epilogue story in because he didn't think it actually was a part of the actual story. He thought it ended with the simple way, but it does. It is part of it. I think it rounds out. But anyway, we'll get there eventually, like next week.
Right.
But yeah, with Paradise though. It's like this is really where we see his full disillusionment as well. Like I think because as you say, like the philosophy allows people to see everything, and they don't like because why would if they liked their lives, why would they leave? And clearly that was the fear of the Webster. That is now head of the central government, or the what do they call it? Committee.
Yeah.
The World Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's interesting that's in there, he doesn't talk about too much, because at that point, after census, Grant was searching for Joe to get the philosophy back, and he never could. And then, he told Nathaniel to, for the dogs to become men, basically, pass that down. So we're talking like by the time a desertion starts is about 500 years later, give or take. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the dogs are spying, and they're watching the mutants, and Joe specifically. And and in Paradise, I think it was Fowler that says to him, well, the Webster family has a lot to account for. You first of all lost the Joanne philosophy, and then they blocked something with a possible truce or whatever, or understanding with the mutants, but we don't know what that is. It's referred to a couple times. So there's another story there of another Webster, and I keep wondering, did he actually write this, or did he actually write this and then it was never, he never liked it or something, but it's never referred to.
Is it or just that he planned to do something with it and never got around to it?
Possibly, yeah. And it's like he could have, the editor of well, not this one, but the ebook that Scott has read states that he wonders if Simak wanted to write more about the Lopers as well. Like, there could have been more stories about them. There could have been another story of what humanity had become. But I don't know if that would have really fit in with his story, because I think it was a reason to get rid of humanity, as you say, Greg, and it worked for the story. And he does this in other novels too. And I'm going to read or reread another month a story called "Choice of Gods." He gets rid of a huge chunk of humanity there as well, but he does it in a different way. So that is a theme with him, to get rid of humanity in some ways. It's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, makes me want to make a list of all the ways humanity has been destroyed in science fiction.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually,
that'd be a cool, fun list.
I mean,
yeah, because this is a unique one. I don't know that I've run across anything like this, where
I think
it was like by choice,
Yeah, and the other thing is too, this could have been one of the first ones that did this, had a pessimistic look at the future of humanity, because science fiction, or at least Campbell's view of science fiction, had a positive view of humanity, that it was always going to continue and grow, like in a sense Asimov did with the Foundation and the future history. Even though there's problems there, humanity is throughout the galaxy.
Right, and that's one of the things I liked most about Star Trek, not counting the current versions, but the optimism of what humanity could become in the future. And it was just generally an optimistic place that you'd want to go to. It's like, oh, this is a goal.
And that is with a lot of sites, like even Babylon 5. See, you said Star Trek, so I have to mention Babylon 5. Right? That's a rule. But yeah, even with that, there's the optimism of where humanity is going to go. They're going to control the universe, basically.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Right.
Do you think that Simak was influenced by the Time Machine at all? Because the way humanity is portrayed in Hobbies seems, though it's not exactly like the E-Boy, it seems similar, if you understand what I mean, where they're not doing anything, it's just pleasure, nothing more.
Yeah, he definitely liked H.G. Wells. That was something that he read and he liked, and his very first story is a time machine-like story where the humanity is gone as well. So right from his very first story, he's showing he shows humanity disappearing. Which is kind of interesting. So even though I don't think he was that. Well, I guess you would have to say he is pessimistic if he did that all the time.
Well, that's kind of curious that you mentioned that. I mean, going back to the Eloi, is that when humanity does not have any challenges to it, it just sort of falls apart. I had just read this for my challenges, a novella. Oh, what was it? It was by Henry Cutter and C.L. Moore. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But essentially, robots come in and do everything for humanity. And going, no, you can't drive yourself to work. It's too dangerous. Oh, no, you can't work. It's too dangerous. We'll do it all for you. And then the humans complain, all we have to do, they'll just let us play cards. That's all we can do. And it's like they're really depressed because all they have to do all day is play cards, and no one wants to do that.
Yeah. Simac said something similar to that here, having no goals.
That's where it works right into hobbies now, because and it's still it's again another. Well, basically in hobbies, it's 2,000 years since the beginning of the stories, or 2,000 years since Jenkins has been online, alive, or whatever you want to call it. And so we're now in Geneva with the last city that's there, with about 5,000 of them there that have, they said, inherited the wealth of the earth, and they don't need anything. They've got robots to do everything for them, and all they do is have hobbies. There's a guy that goes around that redesigns the houses for them, or the inside, they redecorates. And then there's a woman that paints, and then he's writing a history, the definitive history of Geneva, which he believes that nobody's ever going to read. Kind of know the feeling of that, but anyway. But he goes back to Webster House and sees the dogs, and it talks about them, and it's a very, very melancholy story.
Agreed.
Because there's a lot of sadness in it all around, because he sort of realizes that, and Jenkins wants the whole dream back of man, growing along with the dogs and, a civilization together. But the John Webster at this time, Jon, he realizes that could happen, but they could also take over again. And, because the dogs are seeing things differently. They have a different philosophy. They don't have science and mechanics. They deal in more thought, and they're able to see ghosts, or these other dimensions, or at least they can sense these other dimensions.
Okay, no, hold on. Now I'm getting my stories confused. I think I'm thinking of the next story where the dogs hear something. Am I getting my stories?
Cobbles or cobblies or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's mentioned in hobbies, because this is what the dogs are starting to do now. Is they have a couple of tasks. They're watching the wild robots who have banded together and building machines. They're watching the mutants, and they're also listening for the other dimensions. So they're doing three things at the moment of hobbies, and also I'm
jumping ahead again because it's, even though they were published as short stories, it's sort of gelling into a book and not necessarily individual stories.
Hence that's why it works so well. I think it's a novel.
The best fix-up novel.
But yeah, that's what the dogs are doing at that time, and John Webster wants them to stay that way, and doesn't want them to be coerced into anything. And also, too, Jenkins tells John Webster that they have this thought of brotherhood of species, that they will uplift all the others. Like, how are they going to do this? It's not mentioned.
I guess the robots are doing all the work for the dogs. And
yeah, they're the hands. They're the hands.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it is because, like, Jenkins talks about that he's taken on this himself to do this, and this is where you first, or the other dogs realize that he's a Webster. He is actually a Webster. And that's where I think it's very melancholy, the whole story. And that's where, like, in the notes too, the dog scholars are saying that this is the closest to doggish, a doggish story. And I think it's because there's a lot of sort of rumination on, like, what humanity is and what it could have been or what it should be. A lot of thoughts in this, a lot of philosophy rather than deeds, because there's really nothing that happens much in this story. It's mostly just thinking and talking.
Yeah, the whole book is like that. This is a really philosophical novel, like we said before. It's just got these ideas and ruminations on those ideas, and then
regurgitating some of it as well, like, going a little deeper at times into things.
Yeah. You said the Websters have a lot to answer for, and at the end of this story, that Webster is confronted with the idea of eliminating what he sees as the threat.
Yeah.
And then the idea is that there's been hundreds of years with no murders at all, and if he did it, it would undo all of that. And he contemplated it. In the end, he decided not to.
Paradise. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing to do, during World War II too, because the thought that if we could eliminate this one person, then everything would be fine. You know what I mean? It's an interesting just thought that he sort of went through there at the end, and then the question of, well, what is the best thing, and who am I to decide for everyone else what it is?
But then in Hobbies, you get a Webster that makes a decision for everybody else.
Right.
As well. So it's sort of flipping back to, the Websters doing something that actually affects the course of humanity.
Or not doing something, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then we got Jenkins, who is a Webster. He's making decisions, and he makes decisions that is not so much for humanity, but for the future of what's left, of the dogs and everybody else.
Yeah.
So he makes his. But the other thing is too, because at the end of basically of Hobbies, like John Webster has found that there is a defense system that's way below the city that actually creates some kind of dome that keeps everybody in and keeps everybody out. So that's where he seals everybody off. And then he goes to sleep, like in a suspended animation, forever, and he dreams. Something's happening here.
Yeah.
Everybody back? Yeah.
Hey,
you had a freezing.
So and the other thing that's
we got Mark in the chat.
Yeah, everybody's come back, I think. Oh, there he is.
Yeah,
there's finally somebody who put something.
Gentleman in short.
So I was going to make a comment there. There's the comment where the painter goes into that. That's in Hobbies, which it goes into the sleep, the dream sleep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, and then he does, and then well, everybody else does because they can't leave, like, you know. But that's sort of, or they just going to die of old age inside the dome of Geneva. But the other thing that's interesting is there is a hearkening to the past, like throughout the whole story, but it's very much so in this one because you've got like John Webster's son who's going out and has a hobby of living off the land
Mhm.
and refers the past to the present. The backwoods people preferred the past, and they don't want to be anything with technology, so they preferred the past. And Jenkins is even sitting there thinking of the past, and he wished it was back, that he was just a servant. You know, he was just serving whiskey to the Websters.
Hmm.
So that's another theme, and that really comes up with in this one. But the thing is too, everybody, like, once, like humanity, they didn't know what to do when they have nothing to do, like they have no goals, and that begs the question of what's happened to the Lopers, humanity on Jupiter. They don't have anything. They don't need to work for anything. Everything's there. They don't need to eat. So is humanity dead end there as well? Like,
It's another version of this dead end, but you're with the ammonia rains or whatever that are on Jupiter.
yeah, and that does beg the question. Like, is it humanity itself? It doesn't matter what the situation or where you are. Is it going to be this way? Is humanity a dead end?
Destined to become idols of their own, creations, essentially.
Yeah.
What do the dogs actually do? That's also I'm trying to remember. The dogs are just like living the high life.
Yeah, well, they do have the belief of they want to, civilize the other animals. That's their belief. And see, this is the thing, and that's where John asks Jenkins, like, do they have a plan? And he sort of says, well, he does see some kind of plan, and the plan is to civilize the other creatures. But then beyond that, what do they do? And it's thinking and philosophy. I think that's what the whole their whole thing is rather than building machines, it's thinking, it's exploring thought, and also the other dimensions. And I think that's part of it too, that it's hinted at that they won't stop with uplifting and making a brotherhood just with the animals of Earth, but the other Earths as well.
That's the best. Mark, love it. And looking for cobblies too, the dogs do.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And watching the dreaded wild robots,
The wild robots. Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah, so it's just like, to me, it's but yeah, the Sixth Tale, the Hobbies, just had so much. Like it reminded me so much of Huddling Place, in that sense of sort of melancholy a little bit, because Huddling Place starts with a funeral, which right away is sort of a sad time, and then not being able to leave, and not being able to leave to save a friend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of melancholy, a lot of sadness.
For sure. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
And then we've got back to the whole huddling aspect too, because as we were talking before we went live, where the domes on Jupiter out in Paradise that Fowler goes back to are huddling on the landscape there, and then the Webster house huddles on the hillside. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And even then, you know, when Webster goes through all of these things, you know, when he's writing his little book, and he talks about all these things that humanity, it was like, you know, relieved of economic pressure, the social pressures lessened too. A man no longer found it necessary to conform to the standards and the acts of the custom, which played so large a part in the pre-Jovian world. And it talks about religion entirely disappeared, all this stuff. And then he says, there's the root of it. And then he said, if the families had stayed together, if Stara and I had stayed together, and that's his lament for humanity, is if they had stayed together, and that's huddling, isn't it? You know, so it's like, if only we had stayed together, and that's a statement, you know, coming from the trauma of World War II as well. You know, why can't we figure out a way to not go through these things? You know, why can't we stay together? But it's an interesting thing. Webster's thinking he is lamenting that. Yeah.
And the other thing is too about the huddling, because they talked about throughout the whole story is that the cities were a huddling place for humanity, for people. But then the cities woke up, and it became, you know, the agoraphobia, and because they huddled in their little places where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it doesn't matter where humanity is, they're going to be huddled somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because each time they huddle into different things, there's different problems as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, they're near the end of Hobbies. You know, the dogs knew. The dogs had known long before they had been given tongues to talk and contact lenses to read. They had not come along the road as far as men. They were not cynical and skeptic. They believed the things they heard and sensed. They did not invent superstition as a form of wishful thinking, as a shield against things unseen. And then Jenkins says something like, there it is. He sat in the twilight thinking, this is Jenkins. He sat in the twilight thinking of the whiskeys he had carried, of the errands he had run, of the days when Websters had lived and died within these walls. And now, father confessor to these dogs. Cute little devils, and bright and smart and trying hard. You know, so interesting. Father confessor. I just think that that's fascinating, you know, and after thousands of years of life for Jenkins. Very cool.
I know. I mean,
so many thoughts.
So just thinking about what we were saying is, like, I know last week we talked about was Simak religious, and I'm going to have to say no. Just
right. And I did. I put a comment in that last thing. I found out after, even though there's some places that say he was Catholic, the Sean can correct me. Is he a biographer? He's an executor.
He is the executor.
Simak estate. Yeah, he actually wrote in his introduction. He said, even though it is stated out there that he was Catholic, he said he was never in any organized religion. He said that his family had been, his ancestors were. One of his prized possessions was a rosary from his grandma. So he's got like a family Catholic background. But he said he personally had never, even in his youth, was not part of an organized religion. So you're right on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of his books have to do with religion and philosophy.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing.
Certainly lots of thinking down that line, and using some of the language and stuff. But yeah, it's just fascinating thoughts. You know, it's like what would dogs do, or just another species? You know, I think we have sort of a general assumption that things progress the way that we progress, into the future, or the way history has unfolded. Nuclear weapons, let's say, that it's inevitable that every society that's out there in the universe is going to kind of come across that and sort of follow this same timeline. Whereas it'd be interesting to try to come up with what a species like dogs would come up with as a society, and how it wouldn't look like ours at all. Hard thing to come up with, because I am human. I've got all those biases and all those thoughts and all that history.
And there are writers and books that talk about that. Other civilizations that never thought of war or machines or anything like that.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to point to a lot of this as stems from City. Like it was one of the first that actually did this in science fiction to a large extent. Like it opened up the doors to this. And because it is really hard, I can't really think of anything pre-World War II in science fiction that really is that way, that you have a completely different viewpoint of a civilization that is actually a viable civilization, but it also has some technology as well, because without the robots, the dogs can't do a whole lot, the robots are their hands.
Right. Because they mentioned it in the book, like the robot dogs can't do anything, really. They're just kind of limited to being birds.
They think and talk, and that's about all they could do, because they do, I guess, have some kind of science, as we find out a little later, but not like but they explain it in different ways. Like they explain the stars and the lights in the sky in a different way. Like I think that's more in the interstitial material, the editor's material. And it's really philosophy. It's the thoughts behind things. Aaron, what did you think of these so far?
I'm enjoying this. I do actually have a question. Well, it's more a comment on what you said about the fact that that's all the sort of thing that Simak describes in City isn't there in science fiction before the Second World War. Is it because that the Second World War for Simak sort of broke the idea of progress and evolution walking hand in hand? The idea that they are the same thing, and the Second World War sort of proved that progress might not happen, evolution is completely separate from that. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I think, well, it made an impact on him for sure. I don't know if specifically that, but it does show up in other of his books that humanity has gone to the dogs in a sense, and the evolution of humans can be different. And technology, is not. Is that what you're saying? Technology is not geared to the evolution.
The idea that technological progress and evolution, are they the same or not the same, is this interesting question.
Yeah,
especially today,
because humanity uses technology for part of the evolution, like tool use. You make a tool, and then that helped humanity evolve. Into the next stages, and everything else. But then, in a sense, they did because the technology allowed them to create lopers, which is the next evolution of humanity in this universe.
It's a major leap, yeah.
But how did the lopers ever evolve? I mean, that's. I mean, the thing is, like, he never mentioned what a native loper understand a non-native loper, or is it the nature of the loper that you don't care?
Yeah, and why is it that when you become a loper, you aren't bringing humanity with you? The ways of thinking and all that. It's like you can imagine millions of lopers on Jupiter, and they're like, okay, now we need to elect a president. You know what I mean?
The question is like, how much of our belief is biological? Is there a biological need for our species to elect leaders or have leaders?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that something that's in our species, or just something that we've created ourselves?
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the thing, because you've got a situation basically, as I was saying before, on Jupiter now with these lopers that is the same as these people in Geneva to a certain extent. That their surroundings, they don't need to do anything to have everything. Everything is there for them.
That's the thing, yeah.
So does that presuppose that they're going to be the same things are going to happen with the humans that have been changed, or because they've been changed, their whole outlook has changed as well? There's still there won't be any need, because like John Webster in Geneva and everybody else seems to be hearkening for something, like they need something to occupy them, something physical rather than so much. And that's where the dogs don't need stuff physical to occupy them. They're thinking more, I think, than anything. But the humans need something physical, whether it's a guy concocting drinks, John Webster, writing his history book of the city, and his ex-wife or ex-partner, painting, and the other guy that's, redecorating houses. Everybody's doing something. And is that a part of, once you start doing something, you're down a road to destruction?
Could be.
And the need to do that. I don't know if that's what he's sort of saying, but you can sort of see that a little bit, because if that's not the feeling that the lopers seem to have, they just are, like the dog. And I think that's where part of that, the philosophy for the dog, it works for the dogs, the doggish editors, because they can understand that, and the humans can't.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is such a good book.
It is. So next week,
eager to finish it. Yeah.
We're doing a Simple Way and Epilogue.
Well, actually, no. Aesop.
I've read it. I've read Aesop already. So.
Okay. Do you have the thing there, Scott?
Oh yeah. If you give me just a second, I'll go grab it. Hold on.
Like there's a part in it has to be in Hobbies, where they're talking about Jenkins is an old model, that he hasn't changed. He hasn't, like they usually had decommissioned models, and
that's Aesop, I think, were they?
Well, yeah, but they talk about it in this one in Hobbies, where he was left to live because they loved him, and that was the thing. And that's probably what he looked like. He would have been ugly.
Still in the wrapper. This is let me try to get it over there. There we go. So this is actually Sean's, but it's a Keidman recording of Aesop, read by Clifford Simak on vinyl.
Okay. Yeah. On vinyl, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I have it here. We'll be sending that out to Sean here sometime. Oh, there we go. There's a good look without any glare.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and until he gets he gets a new body.
Yeah. Anyway, very cool. This recording, the contents of it are available on YouTube. You can listen to it. Just look it up, but you can hear Simak's voice, and I like recordings by the author a lot.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's complete. That's the thing. I can't remember if it's complete or not.
The story?
Yeah, I don't know.
The story is complete. So it's It's got an editor's preface, and it's about almost an hour long reading.
Could be I don't know.
So it's just the one story Aesop. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they chose that one, rather than the big ones at the time were Desertion and Huddling Place, and always have been. They're the most reprinted ones, and I guess Aesop might be after that. But yeah, I always found it strange why they chose that one. I don't know if there's any notes in there, like inside or on the back, that say anything, because I've never
say anything about why they chose it.
Yeah,
it's not really.
Honestly, Sean, it could be when he recorded it in his life. Did he record it many years after it was written, or was it recorded?
Yeah, this is 1980.
Oh, he read it in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so maybe it's his favorite.
That's what I'm wondering. Did they come to him and say, we want to put out a record or something like that? What would you like to do? And he chose that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Frank Kelly Freeze did the cover.
Because when we talk about it, like you said, not much happens in these stories. More things happen. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. More things happen in Aesop than happened in the other stories. There's more.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
action. I mean, for the lack of a better word, action going on in that.
Yeah, but I still keep wondering of the things, because I've read it so many times. So I always keep wondering of what's happened that he doesn't talk about. What happened to these things? Like what happened? Like did this? And I don't think it's ever said. I don't remember it actually being said whether the rocket ship to Alpha Centauri didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, like, because it took like 300 or 400 or 500 years to perfect the rocket, like the drive, I guess, in order for them to do it, because the what was his name now? The because he actually piloted, like in Census, there was a Webster that was actually on a spaceship going somewhere. But they never heard from him again. Like, did he disappear? Did he die? Did everybody else on board die, or was he the only one on board?
Yeah.
Like the whole. You keep wondering, like, are there other pockets of humanity out there? If I guess if Simak wanted you to know that, he would have done that in epilogue, but
sure.
He doesn't. But he doesn't.
Yeah.
Well,
very good.
I'm just thinking, since the dogs don't believe they can travel in space, there's probably humans out in space. I'd imagine.
Yeah, there could be. And the thing is, too, like, did every human that was, like they're saying, on the other planets, because not every human left Earth to go to Jupiter, did every human on the other planets leave to go to Jupiter? Chances are no, because there still would be some that wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just don't have that information. Can never.
Like it's clear that in Paradise that there was some kind of disturbance on Venus that was worked out. But what that was and how people are living on Venus is another question. But it sounds like most of the planets, there's humans on there in some form or another. And it was Jupiter that was the last one that was really the main one that was the problem. That because they sent out, however many hundreds or maybe even thousands, because it sounds like Fowler was saying that for the 5 years that he was out, they built a whole bunch of these domes for people to come back. So were they still sending people out at the same time?
Hmm.
And he was the only one that came back.
Yep.
And the other thing that's interesting with the storyline is that in Census, it's clear that there's talking dogs. Well, Nathaniel was the first talking dog. But then Desertion is hundreds of years later. There's no mention of the talking dogs. And then we get a talking dog because a Towser is turned into a Loper.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, right. That's exactly. You're right. Yeah.
The dogs in the spaceship weren't talking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was, and the other thing is, it's like, yeah, does somebody just take their dog along with them? You know?
How many people go into space with their dog? I don't know.
Yeah.
If Mark went into space, Elvis would go too. That's for sure.
Yeah, if I went into space, I'd bring my cat if I could.
Yeah.
Don't know how much they'd like it, but
like even Asimov had to have a robot dog for a dog to be on the moon.
That's right. I remember that. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. That robot dog. I'm trying to remember the name of that story. I used to use that story with youth book groups.
Yeah, isn't it a boy's best friend?
It's a boy. That's exactly what it is. A boy's best friend is what it's called, and it's only like 4 pages long.
Yeah.
And there was a lot in it too, like where the Earth is in the sky and stuff like that. Just these, just little brief things that he puts in there that you can just bring up. It's a really good story. Yeah.
Which collection is that in?
I had it in the Complete Robot.
Yeah.
Not sure what else it's in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's in. It's not in the iRobot, and I don't think it's in the rest of the robots. Yeah, so it's only really collected, I think, in the Complete. I think.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good stories in that one, and it's not. Sure. Even though it's called the Complete Robot, it's not quite the Complete Robot.
Yeah.
Semi-complete.
Semi-complete, right. Love it.
But yeah, no, we could go just back to robots again with Jenkins is to me, there are other robots that are non-Asimovian, Asimov, or whatever you want to say, his type of robots.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Simax robots are very, very unique, I think, because they're not really robots.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there what artificial intelligence or just?
Well, no, it's just they're more human than anything, because that's like he said in this not symposium, but this dialogue that him and Asimov had in the early 70s in NorEastCon, I think it was, in Boston, that there's two ways of doing robots, and his is one way of where they're human. They're more human than human, and that's exactly what Jenkins is. Because he thinks of himself as father confessor.
Yeah.
And he is the one that they all look up to, and he's making decisions now for the dogs.
Mm-hmm. Joseph D. Hello.
Hello, Joseph.
Oh, it's hard to get on this.
I think we're at the end of the conversation, but
yes.
I think so too. But yeah, I very much look forward to finishing this. I'm going to do that this week. So
yeah, I'm not sure when we'll be doing the next one, the last one, because you're not available, are you, Scott?
I'm not next weekend, no. But you don't need to wait on me. But yeah, next weekend's out for me.
So, are you available, Greg? Or
I think so. Sometimes my wife tells me we're doing something on a Saturday, and I'm going, okay. No,
Yeah.
that happens.
and well, maybe like what about during the week? Because I think Grix wanted to do.
He does. He has a job like
Yeah,
he has to go to.
yeah, but he was saying like well, I was talking to him in our own conversation that I think he might be available after the fact, so after the weekend, so during the week. So
There's some possibility there.
Yeah, give me a few days heads up, just so I make sure that
yeah.
Honestly, I don't think these stories the last two are very long.
Yeah, no, they're not. The epilogue is really short.
Joseph, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at so I got like 35, maybe 40 pages to go. So yeah, just give me a day or two heads up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll know by midweek or late
right.
in the week for sure, or I should know anyway. And I think Aaron, you're okay for any time basically. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
Just waiting because I don't know how long it takes for
to type out a question. Yeah.
Because I know it takes longer to show up on the system here for me to see
it here at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting ahead of it. So you think City's Simek's best book, Sean, by far?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's my favorite of his for sure. Waystation is great, but there's a lot of them they're great as well. That's the thing is it's like everything he's done. I like something in it, even though it's not quite as well written or thought out sometimes as the other ones, but there's still something in there that I like.
I'm trying to figure out if I have Waystation. I don't.
Because that'll be April. No, not April. May. But then I'm doing something every month now. So next month in April, I'll have to note it is a fantasy story, which is Enchanted Pilgrimage, which is an adventure sort of quest. So that'll work for something else as well.
It will. I'm kind of packed in April with stuff to read, so I don't know if I'll be able to get to that other one, but.
And then I want to read Choice of Gods as well. Is the other one. That's where I say he gets rid of a big chunk of humanity for a reason there as well. So
while we're waiting on Joseph there, I just got these in not too long ago. So this is a DAW edition of Out of Their Minds.
Yeah, I love that cover. I love that one.
Love the cover. And then here's a DAW Werewolf Principle.
Yeah, that's November for sure. Okay. With all the events left open to interpretation, have other writers offered to complete or add to City? I know that it was the case for Foundation Tree by Asimov. I haven't seen anything that anybody. If there is, it's got to be fan fiction type thing. I've never seen a collection of anybody doing City stories at all, and I'm not sure if I really want to.
Yeah. I am very hesitant on pastiche. I mean, I know we did Sherlock Holmes pastiche. I mean, he's in public domain, so everyone can do it. But I'm hesitant to pick up on stories that other authors just work into their world, someone else's world.
Because like you mentioned the Foundation. Well, there's a lot more than just the Foundation trilogy that Greg Bear, Gregory Benford, and I always forget who the other one is. The three Bs.
The three Bs?
Yeah.
Oh, Benford, Bryn, and Bear.
Bear. Yeah, yeah,
Greg
yeah,
Bear. Yep.
yeah. And they
by the way,
did.
we should mention that Werner Vinge passed away.
Oh,
I found that out about
Oh, no.
2 days ago, and I was at a Worldcon one time, and they had a panel called "The Three Bs and a V."
wow.
So Benford, Bear,
Joseph B.
Bryn,
Bryn.
and Vinge. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I
rest
was
in
about
peace.
to mention when you were talking about dogs being uplifted, Bryn has his whole uplift saga of uplifting other species.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, that is it is kind of a theme in some people's, well, in a lot of books. But yeah, but I don't think there's anything that I'm aware of. But yeah, with you talk about pastiches and stuff, like I've read everything that has been written for the Asimov Foundation stuff, like even the Future History, the robot novels, and there was the Susan Kelvin trilogy. All very, very poor. All very poor. But the three Bs, the Bedford,
Bryn.
yes, and
Benford, Bear. Yeah.
they are actually pretty good. I've only read them once, and I do want to read them through again because I still haven't finished the Future History project, because I am at the point of starting the Foundation novels, not the trilogy, but the Forward to Foundation or Prelude, whichever came first. And then the three new trilogy sort of intermingle with the three original trilogies. So it's not that they follow or are in between. Well, they're in between some of the stories. That's the thing. And those are okay. But yeah, most of the time, I can't remember too many things that are good. Well, okay, there is one that is good. A short story by Pamela Stewart called Strip Runner. And it's set on Earth at Caves of Steel. Well, Elijah Bailey is trying to get people to acclimatize themselves to the outside world, so they can be actually when the spacers free up the embargo sort of humans going out into space, they'll be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really good. It's the only one. It's the only one. It's a short story, but it's really well done. And the rest are not very good. They're just, even though they're good writers, or some of them, or at least the short story ones. Like there's a Hal Clement one, but it wasn't very good. It's very Hal Clement, so it's.
You're talking about in Foundation's Friends?
Yeah, Foundation's Friends. Yeah.
I think my favorite in that one was Orson Scott Card's The Originist.
But is that's not a Future History one, is it?
Isn't it in the Foundation? It's like
yes, it is.
Sheldon and everything in that. Yeah,
it is. Yes. Mm-hmm. I forgot that. I haven't read that one in a long time, so I haven't read that one recently, so I don't remember that too much.
You bet.
So that could be a good one too. But I liked the Pamela Sargent one. I thought.
Yeah, you and I read the iRobot novels together. The ones by Zucker. Was he Reichart?
Yeah.
Those they were not terrific.
Well, they weren't even close.
Reads, kind of fun reads. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was so many things that were bad about that.
Yeah. Good memory.
But anyway, yeah. I don't know. I like that's the thing. It's in some ways I would like to see where people would take it, but I also don't want to know.
Well, we just need an AI Clifford Simak.
What?
We need an AI Clifford Simak.
Oh, jeez.
There we go.
No, I'm with John. I'm okay with ambiguous endings to books and stories. I mean, I think
Me too.
sometimes think it's really enhancing
Mhm.
to a book when you don't have the complete.
Well, I agree. Yeah. I mean, this is what, 3 hours of discussions now on 6 stories, and some of which we say, well, not a lot happened in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are ideas that we're talking about. It's great.
If it was Simak that did it, or if he had sort of some background outlines, and stuff like this to help him write the story, that I would love to see.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Good
But
stuff.
some other writer, no,
Mhm.
it just doesn't. It would be interesting. Like if somebody did it, I would definitely read it.
Mhm.
But I may not be happy about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got to get the estate on board because everything he does is in copyright, I think.
Yeah, I would think so. Yep.
Well, that's the thing that's weird because there are, like, the estate did buy everything back because they bought back the story that was for Dangerous Visions 3, and it was published first time in, well, I don't know which, it's not this volume, but in one of these volumes of 14 that were written or put together. But there are other stories that people are still printing, and they don't seem to be any relation. Like, I mean, they're not saying that it's that it's in copyright. Like there are ebooks out there and sort of self-published Kindle type things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that works. Like, even though he bought back the stories, there might be some that are actually in public domain. Some of his early stuff.
That does happen with the way it used, especially when it was published.
Yeah.
There was a cutoff that you had to renew. And I know, like Philip K. Dick let lots of his stories, just he didn't renew them. So you got a lot of Philip K. Dick stories in the public domain.
Yeah.
Even though he died in the 80s or 90s, 80s, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's what's happened with some of these, but anything else apparently, if it was still owned by, Condé Nast, which I assume has all the rights to, or whoever now actually owns Analog, probably still has they bought all the rights, I guess, of the back catalog. So whoever does that, they would have bought it back. So that's why it took a long time, I think, to get these 14 volumes out. But yeah, no, it would be interesting though. But yeah, like I say, I just don't know. It's like going back to, I guess, and anybody's favorite stories to have somebody else do sequels, and I always cringe at that when somebody writes a sequel to another book, and I'm going, how do you have the temerity to do this?
This is cool. There are 11 works by Simak on Gutenberg.
Ah, okay. So yeah, I should check out to see what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because they must be, I would think they have to be pre-World War II or around that time. I'll have to check. It'll be interesting to see. And Mark's being very, very he's spelling it the Czech way as well.
I think he's cutting and pasting. Oh no, he says my phone changes the Czech automatically.
That's great. I love it. All right, guys, I'm afraid I need to run.
All right.
But this is super enjoyable. Thank you all.
I always enjoy having chats on the weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Like I say, for anybody else watching, then we'll see when this will happen for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mark's putting up your Empire. Yeah, that's a rewrite of John W. Campbell's story. Project Project Mastodon is the short story that Macedonia is based on. Hellhounds of the Cosmos. Yeah, there's a bunch there. And I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah,
Thanks,
you can watch the rest of it, Joseph. But yeah, thanks everybody for stopping by.
Excellent. Take
Indeed.
care, all.
Everyone,
Bye.
goodbye.